نستعين وهو خير ناصر ومعين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه الغر الميامين والتابعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. The topic for this evening's discussion is to do with Quranic insights on the importance and exigency of spiritual nourishment. So when we talk about spiritual nourishment, the first question that we have to answer is whether there is such a thing as spiritual nourishment. And for that we have to address an even more fundamental question, which is, does the soul exist? Is there something like the soul? Because in this university environment that we find ourselves in, you will see that in the hard sciences, whether it be physics or chemistry or biology, reality is perceived to be material. Anything that is paramaterial or metaphysical is denied on grounds that it is not amenable to experimentation, it is not amenable to observation. Anything that cannot be perceived by the five senses is considered to be non-existent in the hard sciences. And in scientific terms, we refer to this as scientism or scientific materialism. Oftentimes when you hear about the conflict between religion and science, there is no conflict between science and religion. The conflict is between religion and a particular ideology that is favored by a lot of the atheist scientists in the world today. And that ideology we refer to as scientism or scientific materialism. The idea that matter is all there is to it, and the whole of existence can be reduced to matter. And matter is amenable to observation, it is amenable to experimentation, and therefore if anything is not amenable to these two things, it therefore must not exist. So, and obviously this is a completely ridiculous and nonsensical idea, because as human beings, innately we can perceive that there are realities which are not capable of being measured or being experimented with or observed in a scientific setting. So for example, you have feelings, love, anger, respect, all these abstract ideas. We all know they exist, but they have no material reality. In any case, when it comes to the soul, because the soul cannot be studied in a laboratory, it cannot be observed, it cannot be perceived by any of the five senses, it is denied and rejected. Very much like the concept of God. The concept of God is rejected on grounds that it is not scientific, God cannot be observed, it cannot be perceived by the five senses, therefore he must not exist. So that's why in this discussion, the very first thing that I want to do is establish the existence of the soul using Quranic insights. The Quran gives us a very scientific proof for the existence of the soul. It's amazingly scientific. So what the Quran tells us, first of all, in order to understand how scientists determine whether something is scientific or not, they have many principles. So for example, you have the verification principle that they teach you about in logic. Another very important principle that critical rationalists and scientists and intellectuals have come up with in the modern period to determine the validity of things that are purported to be scientific is what they call the falsifiability principle. Anything, if you want to find out whether it is scientific or not, they say it must pass the falsifiability test. What is the falsifiability test? The falsifiability principle, as stated by Karl Popper, is a principle that says that in order for any claim to be accepted as being scientifically true and valid, you, the person who is putting forward that claim, has to delineate and describe the circumstances under which they would themselves be prepared to accept that it is false. So if you are putting forward a theory, the falsifiability test of that theory is that you have to specify under what circumstances would you, the person who is propounding and putting forward the theory, under what circumstances would you yourself be willing to accept that this theory is false. If you can tell us what those circumstances are, then you have passed the falsifiability test. If you fail to describe those circumstances, you have failed the falsifiability test, and your theory cannot be said to be scientific. So now when we come to the concept of the soul, the Quran tells us that the soul exists. Islam as a religion teaches us that the soul exists, and that there is an afterlife in which our souls and our bodies will be rejoined. But the question is there any falsifiability test for this? Does the Quran tell us of the circumstances under which it would be logical and reasonable for us to reject the existence of the soul? The answer, interestingly, is yes. The Quran not only gives us the falsifiability test for the soul, it gives us a falsifiability test for all of the beliefs that Islam prescribes for its followers. Whether it's the belief in God, whether it's the belief in the oneness of God, whether it's belief in the Akhirah, in Ma'ad, in the Day of Judgment, whether it be the truthfulness of prophets. For all of these beliefs, the Quran gives us falsifiability tests. But right now we're not concerned about those, we are concerned about the falsifiability test for the existence of the soul, because our discussion is about spiritual nourishment. Once it is established that the soul exists, then we proceed to whether it needs nourishment or not. So where does the Quran give us the falsifiability test for the existence of the soul? It does so in the last verses of Surah Al-Baqarah. Surah number 56 of the Quran. You look at verses 83 onwards. In these verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala issues a challenge to all the medical doctors and scientists and professionals of the world. And he says, he describes the last moments in the life of a human being. And he says, فَلَوْلَا إِذَا بَلَغَتِ الْحُلْقُومِ وَأَنْتُمْ حِينَئِذٍ تَنْظُرُونَ وَنَحْنُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْهِ مِنْكُمْ وَلَكِنْ لَا تُبْصِرُونَ فَلَوْلَا إِن كُنْتُمْ غَيْرَ مَدِينِينَ تَرْجِعُونَهَا إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. Describing the last moments in the life of a human being, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, why is it that when the soul reaches al-hulqum, the place between the thorax and the shoulder blades, these are the last moments in the life of a person. When the soul reaches this point, فَلَوْلَا إِذَا بَلَغَتِ الْحُلْقُمْ وَأَنْتُمْ حِينَئِذٍ تَنْظُرُونَ. And the Quran says, you at that moment are looking at the person who is dying. وَنَحْنُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْهِ مِنْكُمْ وَلَكِنْ لَا تُبْصِرُونَ. But at that moment Allah says, what you don't realize is we are closer to that person than you are, but you cannot see. And then Allah issues the challenge. He says, فَلَوْلَا إِن كُنْتُمْ غَيْرَ مَدِينِينَ تَرْجِعُونَهَا إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. This is the challenge to all the medical doctors of the world. Because in any medical classroom, what they will teach you is that this human body, if you ask them, why is it that I'm alive? And how do you define life? They will tell you that life is nothing but the complex interplay between the brain and the different organs in your body. There are very complicated systems that are operating inside us. They are under the control of the nervous system. The brain regulates all the organs and all the systems, whether it's the respiratory system, or the digestive system, or the reproductive system. Everything is connected to the brain. There are impulses, neurological impulses traveling. And it is these impulses, this communication between the brain and the organs, that is the sum total of life. This is the secret of life. And that is all there is to it. The moment these connections are disconnected, life is over. Life is only possible because of the interplay between the brain and the different organs of the body. The Quran's challenge is, and that's why the term that they always use is to say this human body is a machine. It's a very complicated machine, but at the end of the day, it is a machine. There is no soul, there is no ruh, there is no nafs, no such thing. We can explain the functioning of the body in purely medical and biological terms. Here's where the challenge of the Quran comes. The Quran says if you are claiming that this human body is simply a machine, فَلَوْلَا إِن كُنْتُمْ غَيْرَ مَدِينِينَ تَرْجِعُونَهَا إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. Why is it that you can never bring a dead man back to life after he's dead? If the human body was simply a machine, compare it and contrast it with any other machine. Any other machine, we have many of them here. All of these are electrical equipments and machines. When any machine stops functioning, it stops working, it can always be fixed. You can always repair a machine when it stops working. How do you repair it? You identify the flaw. A machine only stops working when there is a problem somewhere in the system. Let's say the problem is in the circuit. If you fix the electrical circuit, the machine is going to start working again. Any machine can be made to work again after it has stopped working by simply identifying the problem and then remedying it, redressing it, and fixing it. If the human body is also a machine, Allah says, why don't you go ahead and try and do the same thing? Go and ask the doctor, this human body, this machine that you were telling us about, it has died. It has stopped functioning. What is the cause? Now, medical doctors can tell you the cause of death. They'll tell you, for example, if the patient died of brain hemorrhage, they'll tell you the brain is a very sensitive organ. It needs a constant supply of oxygenated blood all the time. If it goes even for a few minutes without this supply of oxygenated blood, the brain becomes dead. Okay, no problem. So this is why the patient died, because his brain didn't receive oxygenated blood? Okay. Why don't you restart the supply of oxygenated blood? You can do that medically. Why don't you pump his brain with oxygenated blood and see if he comes back to life? The doctors will tell you there's no point doing it. Because once a person is dead, they cannot be brought back to life. Well, why not? If it's simply a machine, every machine can be fixed. Why is it that this human machine cannot be fixed? The Quran says, we'll tell you the answer. فَلَوْلَا إِن كُنتُمْ غَيْرَ مَدِينِينَ تَرْجِعُونَهَا إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. If you were truthful in your claim that there is no soul, that there is no afterlife, that there is no accounting, you would certainly be able to return the human being back to life after death. But the reason why you cannot return the human being back to life after death is because we have taken away the soul. You were thinking that this body was alive because of the brain and the organs and all of that? No. If you look at a dead body, the brain is there. It's not like when a person dies, their brain disappears, or their heart and their lungs evaporate. No. Every organ is where it was when the person was alive. All the connections are as they were. Then what happened? This machine is exactly the same as it was when it was alive. What changed that now it cannot be brought back to life? The Quran says, فَلَوْلَا إِن كُنتُمْ غَيْرَ مَدِينِينَ. If you were not in a state of debt, if you did not have accounting in the afterlife, if there was no soul, if there was no ma'ad, if there was no afterlife, you would be able to bring back the dead person back to life. But we have taken away the soul, and that is why until Allah returns the soul to this body, this person is never going to come back to life. So this is the proof that the Quran gives for the existence of the soul, and as you can see, it is a very powerful proof. The scientists and medical doctors have no response for this. They cannot explain why this machine cannot be resuscitated and brought back to life. So the Quran says that we have given you the falsifiability proof. This is the falsifiability proof. Under what circumstances would it be logical for us to reject the existence of the soul? If we were able to bring dead people back to life. And that's why as human beings, we have achieved so many breakthroughs in technology. We can transplant the heart, we can transplant the liver and the lungs. We can do so much with this body. But the one thing that we cannot do is bring it back to life after it is dead. Because as Allah says in the same surah, Surah Al-Waqi'ah, He says, نَحْنُ قَدَّرْنَا بَيْنَكُمُ الْمَوْتَ وَمَا نَحْنُ بِمَسْبُوقِينَ عَلَىٰ أَن نُبَدِّلَ أَمْثَالَكُمْ وَنُنْشِئَكُمْ فِي مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. That we have prescribed death for all human beings, وَمَا نَحْنُ بِمَسْبُوقِينَ, and you cannot defeat us in this. عَلَىٰ أَن نُبَدِّلَ أَمْثَالَكُمْ وَنُنْشِئَكُمْ فِي مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. We can change your form and resurrect you in a realm that you have no knowledge about. So once we've established that the soul is actually a scientific concept, there is a proof for its existence. Next, the question becomes, does the soul need nourishment or not? For that, we need to look at the theory of human creation. The Quran gives us this story in various chapters. We get this story of human creation in Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah number 2, in Surah Al-A'raf, Surah number 7, in Surah Al-Hijr, Surah number 15, in Surah Al-Kahf, Surah number 18, in Surah Taha, Surah 20 of the Quran, Surah 38. This story is repeated again and again, the story of our origin and our creation. And it's repeated because it is very important, it is very significant. Our entire future depends on our beginning. How did we begin? So Allah tells us in the beginning, in Surah Al-Hijr for example, Surah number 15, verses 28 and 29, we are told that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala announced to the angels, قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي خَالِقٌ بَشَرًا مِنْ صَلْصَالٍ مِنْ حَمَإٍ مَسْنُونٍ. Remember when your Lord announced to the angels that I am going to create a human being from a mixture of sound-producing mud and clay. فَإِذَا سَوَّيْتُهُ وَنَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي فَقَعُوا لَهُ سَاجِدِينَ. When I am done designing and fashioning this human being, and I blow into him of my spirit, نَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي فَقَعُوا لَهُ سَاجِدِينَ. I want you to fall into prostration. The most important thing that we need to focus on in these two verses is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that as human beings, we have a dual nature. We were made of two substances and not one substance, as the medical scientists and professionals have been leading us to believe. The human being is not just one component, it is matter. Matter is a very important component, but it's not the only. Because Allah describes the human creation as being a two-step process. There was a part of us, the body, that was created from a mixture of mud and sand-producing clay. And on the other hand, that body received the command of God, the ruh that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blew into it. Unfortunately, today the whole world recognizes the first component, the body, which was made of sand and mud and clay. But the other component, نَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي, again, because it is completely and absolutely invisible, it is not amenable to observation by the five senses, the world denies it. And that's why no one talks about it. No one talks about spiritual nourishment because they don't believe in the existence of the soul. But we have already established Quranically and scientifically that the soul exists. So the next stage becomes, then, once you recognize that the human being is composed of these two things, the other thing you need to understand is that everything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created is needy, is muhtaj. The only entity in existence who is free from all needs is Allah. That's why one of the Asma'ul Husna is Al-Ghani. Al-Ghani means the one who is self-sufficient, who is not in need of any of his creations or anyone else. He exists by himself and he sustains himself. He does not need any external source to give him power and energy to survive. But everything other than Allah, every single thing that He has created has needs. The same thing applies to the human being. The human being, each of these two components has needs. So for example, the human body, the physical aspect has needs. The human body needs food, a constant supply of food. It needs water, it needs medication, it needs shelter, it needs protection, it needs all of these things. And if these needs are not met, what's going to happen? If you starve the human body, deprive it of food, water, don't give it medicine when it's sick, deprive it of shelter and protection from the sun and other threats, what's going to happen? Destruction. The human body cannot survive if its needs are not met. So this is at the level of the physical. But then what about the soul? Just as the human body is needy because it is not Allah, the soul is also not a God. The soul is a creation of God, and by virtue of being a makhluk, by virtue of being a creation of God, it is also muhtaj. It is also needy. And it has its needs. But what are those needs? That is a very important thing to recognize because people sometimes confuse. They think that the needs of the human body are the same as the needs of the soul. So what does the human body need? We already mentioned. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He designed the system in such a way that when it came to the human body, He created the human body from what? From sand and clay. Where did the sand and clay come from? Because when we're talking about nourishment or nutrition, nutrition has to do with the point of origin. A thing can only be satisfied from substances from which it originated. So let's explain this. The human body, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah Taha, Surah number 20 of the Quran, verse 53. He tells us about its point of origin. So He says, مِنْهَا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ وَفِيهَا نُعِيدُكُمْ وَمِنْهَا نُخْرِجُكُمْ تَارَةً أُخْرَى. From it, He's referring to the earth. From it we created you, to it we shall return you, and from it we shall resurrect you on the day of judgment. So the Quran is very clear, this human body that we have came from the earth. وَاللَّهُ أَنْبَتَكُم مِّنَ الْأَرْضِ نَبَاتًا. Allah caused you to grow from the earth. So because the human body originates from the earth, everything that this body needs comes from the earth. Because this body itself came from the earth. So the food you eat, where does it come from? It grows from the earth. The water that you drink, where does it come from? It comes from the earth. The clothes that we wear, where do they come from? The raw materials. It comes from the earth. Every single thing that the human body needs comes from the earth because the human body itself comes from the earth. However, the soul, where does the soul come from? And can the soul be satisfied by the very same things that the human body is satisfied with? No. Because the Quran tells us that the soul did not come from this earth. In Surah Al-Isra, Surah Bani Israel, chapter number 17 of the Quran, verse 85, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ قُلِ الرُّوحُ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي وَمَا أُوتِيتُم مِّنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. They ask you concerning the soul, O Prophet, tell them, قُلِ الرُّوحُ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي. Tell them that the soul comes from the command of Allah. That is the point of origin. It originates from the amr of Allah. Because the soul originates from Allah, it can only be satisfied by nourishment that comes from a divine source. Just like the body. The body comes from the earth, therefore it can only be satisfied from substances that come from this earth. In the same way, the soul originates from Allah. And so when the soul is hungry and thirsty, there is only one nourishment that can nourish the soul. And that is connection with the divine source. Connection with Allah. Al-ittisal billah is the only source of nourishment for the soul. And if the soul is deprived of this nourishment, what is going to happen? The same thing that's going to happen with your body. As I mentioned, if you deprive your body of food and water and medicine and shelter, your body is going to undergo destruction. It will die. It will not survive. Same thing with the soul. If the soul is disconnected from its nutrition, which is connection with Allah, connection with the divine source, the moment you disconnect the soul from its source of nourishment, what is going to happen? The soul is going to become diseased. في قلوبهم مرض فزادهم الله مرضا. This is what the Quran refers to as the disease and the ailment of the heart. فإنها لا تعمى الأبصار ولكن تعمى القلوب التي في الصدور. The real blindness, the Quran says, is when the heart is blinded from the dhikr of Allah, from the remembrance of Allah, from connection with Allah. It is not the blindness of the eyes that is a real blindness, but it is when the soul disconnects itself from the reminders of Allah that are there in the Quran. And that's why وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكَ وَنَحْشُرُهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ أَعْمَى. On the Day of Judgment, everyone will be raised according to their reality. If a person lived their life in this world disconnected from Allah and His reminders, he will be resurrected on the Day of Judgment in his true form, which is he will be blind. قَالَ رَبِّ لِمَ حَشَرْتَنِي أَعْمَى وَقَدْ كُنْتُ بَصِيرًا. He say, Allah, why have I been raised blind when I used to be seen in the life of this world? قَالَ كَذَلِكَ أَتَتْكَ آيَاتُنَا فَنَسِيتَهَا وَكَذَلِكَ الْيَوْمَ تُنْسَى. My ayat, my reminders and my revelations came to you, you forgot them, you disconnected yourself, you turned away from them, so today you shall be forgotten. So from this we understand that the Quranic concept of spiritual nourishment is, first of all, the soul does exist, number one. Number two, like every other thing that Allah has created, it is muhtaj, it has needs. And number three, the biggest need of the soul is al-ittisal bi-dhati ilahiyya, connection with the divine source. And that's what the Quran refers to in verses 28 and 29 of Surah Al-Ra'd, Surah number 13 of the Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَتَطْمَئِنُّ قُلُوبُهُم بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبُ. That those people who have iman, their hearts, they find solace and comfort in the remembrance and dhikr of Allah. أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبُ. It is only in the remembrance of Allah that the heart and soul can find true rest, true peace, and true tranquility. So if we live a life that is God-centric, that is God-conscious, that is connected to Allah, our soul will be at peace, it will be healthy, it will have all the nourishment that it needs. And that's why within the Islamic Sharia, if you look at it from the perspective of the Quran, all the wajibat and all the muharramat, everything that Allah has made fard and everything that Allah has forbidden, it is for our own benefit, it is for the nourishment of the soul. So for example, as-salawat al-khams, the 5 daily prayers, Allah has made them fard on us. But what is the ultimate goal behind this? As we are told in Surah Al-Taha, إِنَّنِي أَنَا اللَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا أَنَا فَاعْبُدْنِي وَأَقِمِ الصَّلَاةَ لِذِكْرِي. The purpose of salah, لِذِكْرِي, to establish remembrance of Allah in our life. Similarly, in Al-Hajj, when you perform the pilgrimage, you are being disconnected from the dunya and you are being connected with Allah. وَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ فِي أَيَّامٍ مَعْلُومَاتٍ. Those specific days you are to engage in reflection and contemplation and remembrance of Allah. Same thing with Shahr Ramadan. Shahr Ramadan is this amazing season in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the opportunity to turn our focus away from nourishment of the body and focus on the nourishment of the soul. And nourishment of the soul, when we stand up at night for salah, we recite the Quran, we fast during the day. All of this is an opportunity that has been given to us to connect our souls with the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so that our souls can maintain a healthy balance. Unfortunately, unfortunately, because of this reality is not understood by so many people in the world today, you find a lot of non-clinical forms of depression are on the rise. There is so much stress, there is so much anxiety. You look at some of the most developed societies in the world. In the United States of America, 25,000 people commit suicide every year. In Japan, 28,000 people commit suicide every year. In Switzerland, similar number of people. If you look at the website of the World Health Organization, thousands of people in these very developed and advanced countries are committing suicide because they have depression, they have these problems. Why? A lot of the times it is because the soul is not connected to God, and that's why it feels that void, it feels it's meaningless, it feels that it is purposeless. And that's why within the religion of Islam and within the Sharia, we're given all these obligations, even the muharramat, if you go to see those things that Allah has forbidden. For example, the last example I'll share from Surah Al-Ma'idah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses us and He gives us a list of prohibitions. So He says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا إِنَّمَا الْخَمْرُ وَالْمَيْسِرُ وَالْأَنصَابُ وَالْأَزْلَامُ رِجْسٌ مِّنْ عَمَلِ الشَّيْطَانِ فَاجْتَنِبُوهُ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ. Alcohol and gambling and stone altars and arrows of divination, all of these رِجْسٌ مِّنْ عَمَلِ الشَّيْطَانِ. They are filled of shaitan's handiwork, فَاجْتَنِبُوهُ. So stay away from them, لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ, so that you may be successful. But then in the next verse, Allah gives us the legislative intent, the reason why these things are haram. So He says, إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ الشَّيْطَانُ أَن يُوقِعَ بَيْنَكُمُ الْعَدَاوَةَ وَالْبَغْضَاءَ فِي الْخَمْرِ وَالْمَيْسِرِ وَيَصُدَّكُمْ عَنْ ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ وَعَنِ الصَّلَاةِ فَهَلْ أَنْتُمْ مُنْتَهُونَ. That shaitan only desires to sow the seeds of discord and enmity between you by using gambling and alcohol, and he also desires to disconnect you from the dhikr and remembrance of Allah and from salah, so will you not desist. So we can see from this that in the religion of Islam, a lot of these obligations that we've been given, the ultimate maqsad, the ultimate goal is to connect us with the remembrance of Allah and to protect us from all those things that disconnect our soul from its main source of nourishment. So with that, we can open the floor.
Now, question.